What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Loki Season 2, Episode 6. The finale is now less than 24 hours away, and you know we love a good theory around here, and I got a doozy for you guys today. I got some footage to back up my claims. I got some key points that I think is going to lead to Loki's final moments, or at least the Loki that we know in the MCU. But before I get into any of that, as always, if you enjoy the content, enjoy the theories, and you want to support the channel, we do appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and I'm definitely going to need you to comment down below if I'm hitting the mark, missing the mark. And listen, we love reading everything you folks have to say. Loki has now started time slipping. We don't want to underrate that, okay? So before we get into the theories, before I get into showing you guys the footage, time slipping is quite a big deal. It's a new power. Let's call it what it is. Most people would covet this. They want a time stone, a literal infinity stone to be able to do what Loki can now. A lot of the theories you're seeing online, we're seeing Loki, a lot of people thinks that he's going to become he who remains, kind of like this guy. Unfortunately, I don't think that's the way we're going to see things play out. I think this Loki is actually going to be the one who does not remain, if that makes any sense. As I said, I got some footage coming in. I know we're trying to leave the Infinity Saga in the past. I get that. I'm with you. We're on to the multiverse saga. But I really think the turning point for Loki was at the beginning of Infinity War. They killed him way too fast off the first scene in the ship. And there's some mannerisms and some wording that takes place there that I want to share with you guys right now and kind of prove my point of where I think this is going with the time slipping. So without further ado, take a look at this clip and I'll point out a few things shortly after.
Of Thanos.
Dread it. Run when he arrives all the same. The Tesseract dead.
Kill away.
All right, stop!
The sun will shine on us again. Well, for one thing, I'm not Asgardian. We have a Hulk.
Okay, so right away, a couple things to note. This was a pivotal moment in Infinity War where Thor was beaten. Obviously, Loki was still fairly unscathed. If you look at the first conversation that Thanos has with Loki when he's about to apply the Power Stone to Loki's brother Thor, he's still very stoic, very nonchalant, very jealous Loki. He says, you know, go ahead, basically. He's not, even though he has love for his brother, he's protecting his own ass, as Loki often does or used to do. That's the first thing that was like, okay, this is the Loki from Avengers, from Thor Ragnarok. Although he is on the righteous path to becoming a hero, he still has his common tendencies as the god of mischief. The next thing we see is he's holding the Tesseract. Okay, so we assume that this is the Loki from the main or sacred timeline. He still has the Tesseract, which is one of the Infinity Stones. He hands it over to Thanos. He also explains that when Thanos calls him an Asgardian, he says, I'm not Asgardian. Okay, that's a big point of note. He says the words right then, I'm not Asgardian. However, also, when he says, we have a Hulk, and the Hulk comes off screen and attacks Thanos, I want you to look very carefully. He jumps, Loki dives, and he grabs Thor, and he rolls off screen. Now, here's the funny part. Think about the length of the fight with the Hulk. Just think about how long it lasts on screen, and there's more to come in the next clip I'm about to show you in a few seconds. After he fights the Hulk and, Thanos beats the crap out of the Hulk, you'll notice Thor comes in and hits him across the back with a piece of metal or some sort of weapon. But it always left me wondering, why didn't Loki attack? Where is Loki during that whole fight? And where is he shortly after the fight when Thanos crushes the Tesseract, etc., which again, I'll catch you up in a few seconds. So it always made me wonder, if you have two gods, Loki and Thor, why wouldn't they both attack Thanos at his back when he defeated the Hulk as a duo? Why would only Thor rush in? And where is Loki in these final moments. And with that, let's watch the next part of this trailer, this footage, to really show you why I think Loki is time slipping and switches places with his original sacred timeline self. Take a look at this.
Interject. If you're going to Earth, you might want a guy. Do you have a bit of experience in that arena? Loki, Prince of Asgard, Odin's son, God of mischief, do undying fidelity.
We'll never be a god.
Okay, let's break down this second scene real quick. First of all, has it ever bothered anyone else besides myself when Loki, after Thanos cracks the Tesseract and he gets the stone, that Loki comes from a very weird angle off screen and enters having that conversation about New York? It's like he comes from behind some rubble. I don't know. I always found it a little fishy. I was going to do a theory on this on Loki season 1, but it didn't play out the way I thought. But now I had to bring it up. Then his next words as he's walking towards Thanos after making the statement about New York, he literally slightly contradicts himself from the first segment that I just showed you where he says, I am not Asgardian. As he's walking towards Thanos this time, he says, I am Prince of Asgard. Now, I realize, yes, he's not physically Asgardian, but why would you denote Asgard in your last statement and then all of a sudden you're now saying you're the Prince of Asgard as if you're proud of it? Also, he's more jolly when he comes from behind that rubble or whatever off camera, as where the stoic, more aggressive side of Loki in the first clip I showed you, now he's more ecstatic, he's more animated, more like the Loki TV show. As he approaches Thanos even further, he then has a very emotional moment where he says, Odin's son, and he looks to his brother. Now we know that the Loki from Loki season 1, season 2, has seen the clips of his life leading up to that very moment where he was choked out by Thanos and killed. So he knows the life he's lived. He knows the amendments that he's made, the relationship that was built with Thor and his father over time that he himself never got to experience because he was whisked away from Avengers, from the branched timeline. So I think that Loki that's approaching Thanos knows this, and he's almost saying his goodbye to a life that he never got to live, if that makes any sense. And as he approaches, one last thing he says, the God of Mischief, which is something that's very heavy in Loki season 1 and season 2. And he puts his head down, and for a moment, he almost seems to build a tear or have some sort of final moment where he is almost as if he already knows he's not going to kill Thanos. Which Loki from season 1, season 2 would know that he dies at the hand of Thanos in that moment. Makes you really wonder, or makes me really wonder. Again, this is a distorted theory. I'm just running with it. Last but not least, as he's being choked by Thanos in his final moments, he says, you will never be a god. Okay? How would he know that if he never seen the rest of the timeline, which would have happened in the TVA? He knows what happens through Thanos and them now. We've never seen that on camera, but one is to assume. It's just too many things. So hear out my final theory on what I think is going to happen in the finale of Loki season 2, episode 6. The moment when Loki dives, he grabs his brother as Thanos is fighting Hulk. There's quite an amount of time through that whole fight, plus the whole segment where Thanos cracks open the Tesseract, revealing the stone and planting it in the gauntlet, that I think Loki, when he rolled off screen, that is the moment that our Loki from season 2 time slips back to that pivotal moment and grabs himself behind the rubble. They have a moment behind there. He would have enough time to have a very lengthy conversation, maybe enough to explain what's going on, explain that Thanos is not the ultimate threat, maybe Kang is, or the court of Kangs. Maybe he has a moment to catch him up on friendship. I mean, this Loki has learned a lot, okay? Loki from the TVA has Mobius, Obi, his new friends, his Sylvie, his new family. But he also realizes that the sacred timeline Loki already had that. He didn't have to learn it like he did. So what if bear with me right now. What if Loki time slipped back to that moment where Loki from the sacred timeline rolls behind the rubble, Thanos is doing his thing, Thor's doing his thing. He sits himself down and he says, this is what's happening. This is what's going to happen in the future. Yada, yada, yada. He, the TVA Loki, would know that he has to fulfill his destiny on the sacred timeline, which is be killed by Thanos. But he's lived his life. He knows what he has to do. So maybe he sacrifices the TVA Loki himself at the hands of Thanos while giving the natural Loki from the sacred timeline, perhaps the only one that can save us against the court of Kangs, gives him a chance to get off that ship, get away. And there is no tricks. Loki does have to die in that moment. Perhaps he sent the Loki we know from Thor Ragnarok. Maybe he sent that Loki to the end of the timeline. So maybe after all, he is he who remains, but it is not the Loki we know from the TVA. It is the original Loki that never got much screen time from Infinity War, that never really got his big moment. And now he will move on in, we assume, the Kang dynasty. And maybe he's the one to need to assemble some new heroes because he knows the threat that is coming. Now, a lot of you might be out there saying, well, where was he during the rest of the Thanos invasion? Where was he during the blip and all that stuff? Well, okay. Obviously, if he has a greater purpose, maybe sent to the end of the timeline, he couldn't intervene in the rest of Thanos's fight, the 5-year later fight, whatever. He has to stay off grid. Maybe he was blipped. We don't know. But something tells me that Loki that got choked out in what we thought was Infinity War, I don't think is Loki from Thor Ragnarok. I believe it is a Loki who has time slipped from the TVA all the way back to this moment to fulfill his destiny and give his true sacred timeline self the best shot at surviving so that he can take on the bigger threat, which is Kang. Now, by all means, you can come at me in the comments. I love when you do so. You can agree with me, disagree. You can pick holes. You can denote me. You can do whatever you want. You can join in the fun. But we love bringing you these distorted theories, and I certainly think this is one for the books, guys. Loki Season 2 finale, Episode 6, is just less than 24 hours away, the same night as the Marvels, and I don't know if they're going to cross over in the ends. I don't know what we're going to see, but it's a great time to be a Marvel fan. Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoy the distorted theories and you enjoy the content, as always, if you want to hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, leave me a comment down below. We always appreciate it. And with that, I am the real Jussy of the Distorted Theorists, and like we always say around here, keep it real.